Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm talking about Dungeons and Dragons 5e and I'm talking about variant rules. I'm not really talking about hulking hurlers, but I thought it was quite an interesting sort of meme. What I'm talking about is the kind of variant rule that I use in my game. And I adopted this rule as a response to some of my players not really enjoying the game the way I had hoped they would. This is a variant rule. It's called the maximum critical hit damage variant rule. I have made a name up, okay? Maximum critical hit damage. That's what it is. This variant rule is not in the Dungeon Master's Guide, if you're wondering. It is my own home or house rule. So it's also a duplication of a rule that did exist in previous games, such as Dungeons and Dragons 4e. I know Dungeons and Dragons 4e is not popular with many people, but trust me, there is actually a lot to be learned from that game. Not everything, but some things. This particular rule does not replace, I'll make it clear, this variant rule does not replace or change the core rules for critical hit damage. In no way does it do that. It is there simply as an option for players to use if they wish to. So essentially, when you get a critical hit, so you make your attack roll, you get a critical hit when you roll a natural 20, which is a 20 on a 20-sided dice or d20, and this results in extra damage. So if you turn to page 196 of the player's handbook, you'll see details on how critical hit damage is actually used. I'm going to go through it and just talk about it really briefly, directly from the book, and then I will describe why and how I use this rule. So on page 196, it says, when you score a critical hit, you get to roll extra dice for the attack's damage against the target. For all of the attack damage dice, so you're going to roll all of the attack damage dice twice and add them together. Then add any relevant modifiers as normal. So your damage modifiers you add after that. You don't actually double the modifier, you only double the number of dice you are rolling. To speed up play, you can roll all of the damage dice at once. So once you've doubled the dice, you just roll them all at once. So that is the standard rule for critical hits. My rule is a little bit different, and I'm going to use the King's Road and a couple of trolls and an adventuring party to demonstrate. So my variant rule works like this. It's optional for the players to use, so they can choose to ignore it or they can choose to select it. They get to choose between using the core mechanic, which is the rule I just talked about right now out of the player's handbook, or they can use my variant rule before rolling for damage. They cannot select to do so after they've already rolled for damage and see, oh, okay, I'd actually prefer to use your variant rule, Fred, because, well, essentially they're probably rolled really low. So I don't allow it that way. I only allow them to make that decision before dice are rolled. And the reason being is the variant rule does not involve any dice rolling. So this is a 20-sided dice. Most of you know what they are. And, well, you should. A 20 or natural 20 is when you roll a 20 on the dice, right? So the maximum critical hit damage rule or variant rule works like this. The player rolls no dice whatsoever. So if our barbarian has got a great axe and gets to use a 12-sided dice for damage for their critical hit, okay, they would get to roll 2 of those. For a critical hit, if they rolled a 20 for the attack and it was a natural 20, they get to roll 2 because normally they only get 1 plus their attack, their damage modifier. In this case, I don't allow that. What I do is they still use the dice that they would normally use, but they don't roll it. All that takes place is they take the maximum value from the damage dice. So if it's a 12-sided dice, they simply take the 12 and add that to the damage modifier that they might have. And in this case, for a barbarian, it's probably going to be their strength modifier. And if they've got rage going, they'll have a bit of extra damage coming out from that. That's all it is. It's very, very simple. So I will make it clear, you do not double the dice and take the maximum value. Okay? It's not like that. Not at all. It's not double the dice and take the maximum value on both dice. It is only, you don't double the dice, you just take the maximum value off the dice. Why do I use this rule? The rationale for using it is actually to flatten the mathematics for damage done by a critical hit. If I flatten the mathematics, it makes it easier to get rid of the humps and hollows that occur when you're rolling dice. Now, it certainly eliminates a lot of the random aspect and gambling aspect to the game. It's faster in combat, so faster combat sessions are always good. It gives the players more options. So you can see that by applying it in this way, and it's really just poaching the rule for Dungeons and Dragons 4e, their critical hit rule. They get to choose whether they use the standard core rule or they use my rule. And if they're a player who has had a lot of bad luck, they may decide, well, actually, I really need it to just do, consistent amount of damage. And if I use that rule, then I know I'm going to get at least 12 points of damage plus my damage modifier, and I'm happy with that. That's good enough. Or they can choose not to use it. Totally up to them. It essentially allows unlucky damage dice rolled to be, not to really be a distraction from the critical hit. It's kind of a bit of a bummer when you roll your critical hit, you go to roll your damage dice, you pick up two dice, you roll them, and of course you get really low values. So rolling a 1 and a 7 is not quite so bad, that it's still pretty low really for 12-sided dice. And it can be worse if you wind up rolling good old snake eyes. Snake eyes would really suck. So that's 2 1s. 2 1s on 2 dice, and then you're going to be adding your damage modifier, so it doesn't wind up being much of a critical hit then, which is why I use it. So it reduces players disliking the poor results of the damage dice. Really simple rule. It doesn't require an awful lot on your part. I don't even have it written down. I just use it vocally. I just say, look, this is your option if you want to, particularly when it comes to critical hits. If you feel that you need to write it down, by all means, if you decide to use it. So if you found this useful or informative or interesting, then please share and like the video. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live. And also, not only hitting the bell button will notify you when I'm live, but it will also notify you when I publish new videos. If you want to support my channel, you supported my channel by watching this video, and I have to say thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I know it's very, very short content, but I've tried to give you my rationale behind it. I have hundreds more videos you're welcome to go and check out. Some of them are on variant rules. There will probably be more of them in the future. I don't plan to do Patreon for 2019, but I do have affiliate links to Amazon and the book depository where you can go and buy stuff online. I get a small commission that helps support the channel. Now, this is your opportunity to give me feedback. What did you think of this variant rule? It is essentially poaching it from an existing rule system that used to be used. That's all it is, and just applying it in a slightly different manner, that's all. So tell me what you thought of the rule, or tell me about some of the variant rules that you use in your game. I'm actually quite interested. It would be good to know your rationale for why you do it the way you do it. I think that's actually really important. My rationale for this is that I want players to feel important and useful when they finally get that impressive critical hit. And flattening out the maths is always one way of doing it. And that's it. And till next time, keep rolling those 20s.